good boy. You sleep with me and Robin tonight.
Bitch trying to get wife with my dick, she can't get up, smoke up by the.
I just wanted to say that when I was originally making this video, I had the impression that Punk Hazard was actually like really hated and nobody liked it. I see now obviously that that's not true. It's like 50-50 between the community, but I see that this take that I thought was going to be super hot and mind-blowing is the most lukewarm and mediocre, stale thing ever. So that's pretty funny. So that's about it. Roll footage. Well, I'll be damned. Just when I thought that One Piece couldn't get any worse and I was on the brink of dropping it after the tragedy that was Fishman Island, lo and behold comes Punk Hazard. Punk Hazard is probably the best arc I've seen in close to 300 episodes. The last good piece of content was during the war arc, and I'm gonna be honest, that shit stopped slapping after the 30th episode, bro. Just how many times are you gonna kill oars? Sorry, that's getting off topic. I talked about this very briefly in my last video. Not that I'm plugging it, but I'm just saying I did. One Piece has a pretty bad track record with villains. We've had characters like Spondum, or pretty much any of them from Fishman Island, Thriller Bark. We have a lot that are just throwaway evil because they're evil, with pretty terrible backstories and even worse motives. That being said though, some of the warlords, the admirals, we have some good villains, which tells me that One Piece is capable of it, and Punk Hazard proved it. This fight between Luffy and Caesar was probably one of the best. It is an amazing way to show a villain off. Now obviously this wasn't the first time we've seen him, but it's one of the first times we fight. His power is interesting. Do you hear that, Fishman Island? An interesting power. Take notes. He actually got me hyped because not only was his power interesting and creative, it was on the level of JoJo stands. And this fight between him and Luffy is one of my favorites because look at this. They're both landing blows on each other. So often in One Piece, Luffy shows up, he gets his ass kicked, and then he comes back later stronger and they just duke it out. That's pretty much the typical formula we see time and time again. But this mixed it up. Luffy wasn't stronger, but he wasn't weaker. This was a worthy opponent for him where he had to use his devil fruit to its limits to really fight him. This was an interesting fight, and that's not something I can say for so many arcs. One Piece crossed a line with Caesar, and that's the first time they've ever really crossed a line except for maybe the boring line. Caesar was such a good villain. This man was pure evil. He was drugging children. That's so cool, and I'm glad that they crossed the line. I'm glad that One Piece did that because that's such a creative villain. Putting drugs in their candy. I don't really understand the whole giant thing. Maybe that'll come back later. I don't really get it. I thought it was unnecessary. But the fact that this little girl almost overdosed intentionally to save her friends. Now I do have to say, this dude over here, I've honestly already forgotten his name, but this dude just turned really hard but still lost. Now here's the thing about that. I do not like Law. Law is not a good character and he is ridiculously overpowered, and I think that makes him boring. And it was cool to see that they had Law on the ropes like that. That isn't what made him a bad villain. He was a bad villain because he just had no depth. He was just strong, and just pure strength isn't a good villain. But yet again, this bird woman over here that was Snow, she was interesting and she had some really cool character development because she was willing to die for Doflamingo. And the whole switcheroo with the hearts, that was an interesting concept and a very cool way to kill a character. Speaking of death, one of the coolest elements of Punk Hazard besides the island itself was Land of the Dead, or the purple gas. The gas was a really cool opponent because even though it wasn't really technically alive, it was constantly pushing our heroes and villains closer and closer together, tearing away every sense of comfort and security that they had. It was destroying the environment around them, forcing them tighter and tighter together. That's a really interesting concept, and we were shown this shit's deadly. We watched a bunch of people die. That was intense. I gotta tell you, I was excited because I thought for a moment One Piece was breaking the curse and actually killing people. But no, the only person that stayed dead was Bird Woman. All these people turned to stone, this emotional impact that carried. At the end, they just casually dropped some lines about it. They're like, oh yeah, everybody's actually alive. It doesn't really matter. We're just gonna go get them. What? Y'all just undid all the most important stuff in the arc. The worst part of this arc, and the most unbearable part, were these episodes at the start where their hearts and stuff got swapped around. This was the most cartoony bullshit I have seen in so long. One Piece has some silly moments, and that's whatever, but this is unbearable to watch. This went on for so long. Sanji just perving over his new boobs or whatever. Frankie in Chopper was actually kind of funny for a little bit, but this shit just went on for so long. We were dangerously close to Thriller Bark territory, and you all know how I feel about that. It would be one thing if you could at least argue it helped the plot, but it didn't. They just got swapped back anyways. But at the end of the day, those two things, though they're pretty big, are pretty much all I have to complain about with this arc. We got some G5 and Smoker character development. We had a really good cast of villains that set up really well into the next arc, Dressrosa, which for the first time, I'm actually excited for. This arc has some weak moments, but I think its crown jewel, like I said before, is its gas. To make a villain that isn't even alive is so cool. They basically made the Fortnite circle. Like I said before, I'm contradicting myself. They kind of ruined it at the end. But I just think that that's such an interesting and cool idea. Anyway, all that is to say, despite its many flaws, I think that Punk Hazard is actually really good, and I think that it far passes anything like Fishman Island. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.